Today in Trekking Through Compliance, we see the return of Harry Mudd in iMud.
Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of Trekking Through Compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Trekking Through Compliance, Episode 37, iMud. In this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, we consider the episode iMud, which aired on November 13, 1967, and occurred on Stardate 4513.3. A man named Mr. Norman, who has been aboard the Enterprise for 72 hours, and strikes Dr. McCoy as odd. McCoy's suspicions are confirmed when Norman overpowers Ensign Jordan, the auxiliary control operator, and redirects the ship. Security guard Rowe reports that the directional controls are now unworkable. Mr. Norman then barges into engineering, increases speed to warp 7, and sets a booby trap to prevent tampering. He hijacks the Enterprise and takes it on a 4-day trip to an uncharted planet of robots who exist solely to serve humans. Harcourt Fenton Mudd, previously encountered in the episode of Mudd's Women, is the ruler of these robots. He's escaped from prison where he had been condemned to death for fraud and has created an army of 500 robot women. He also created an android version of his nagging wife, or former wife, I should say, Stella. Unlike the real Stella, the androids follow instructions and are forced to shut up when Mudd tells them to do so, i.e., former wife Stella. Mudd is being studied by the robots who are accommodating him, but refuse to let him go. The androids tell Kirk that they were built by people from the Andromeda galaxy. However, the civilization which constructed them was destroyed by a supernova, and so the androids were left without supervision. They have now found a new purpose in Mudd. Spock makes inquiries and discovers there are 207,809 androids, and most importantly, they seem to be controlled by some centralized coordinating power. Mudd beams androids aboard the Enterprise and then sends down the entire crew. Chekhov is fascinated when he finds that the female robots are programmed to carry out all the activities of which human females are capable. Uhura does not find captivity so unpleasant when she is promised immortality. Mudd attempts to take over the Enterprise and strand Kirk and crew on the planet in place of himself. However, the robots do not permit Harry Mudd to carry out this plan. They find people too destructive and plan to take over and serve all humans in the galaxy to control them. Spock learns that there are very many robots of Alice, Oscar, and et al. Series, but only a single Norman. He speculates that Norman is the central coordinator and suggests that they coordinate their efforts on him. They tranquilize Mudd and then claim they need to beam him aboard the Enterprise to cure him. The androids are about to grant the request until Uhura pretends to reveal that this is merely a ploy to get aboard the Enterprise. She claims her motivation is that she wants to be made immortal. The landing party, and including Spock, then engage in a series of illogical and frankly moronic actions in order to confuse and overload the androids. This culminates in the immobilization of Norman himself when Harry tells him everything I say is a lie. Kirk leaves Harry on the planet with his attendant robots to serve as an example of human failure to them. The robots are also reprogrammed to carry out their original task of rendering the planet fit for human life. As a final blow to Harry Mudd, Kirk leaves behind several android copies of his shrewish wife, Stella. So what's the fun fact from this episode? Well, according to Walter Koenig, i.e. Chekhov, NBC considered making a spin-off series detailing the comical adventures of Harcourt Fenton Mudd after the success of this episode. They assigned Gene Roddenberry to develop the idea, but being busy with Star Trek and other projects, he didn't have time for it and the series was never conceived. However, Mudd appears in the cartoon version of Star Trek up to his usual tricks, or I should say the animated version. So what are we to make of Harry Mudd in the return of iMud? Well, it certainly could be seen as a very silly episode, particularly with the ending around Stella. But according to James Martins, in a comment on Mission Log, he sees the tie and the key is iRobot. And Asimov's robot novels, the robots evolve from looking like machines to looking human, and their prime directive to never harm their masters led to the robots taking over the government of the planet for humanity's own good. It was a benevolent dictatorship, but Trek sees that scenario as a loss of personal freedom too dear to pay. If the robot Norman had any emotional intelligence, he would have never revealed he was an android and simply carried out his plan with the crew of the Enterprise. The idea was to infiltrate the human population and take over for their own good. Obviously, we saw this with Dr. Corby's plan. We've seen it with Landru, Val, and in Spock's brain. So this is a recurring theme in Star Trek, although I generally take it back to Pinocchio. Here, the android wants to be a little boy. Will AI ever take over compliance? And the answer is clearly no. There are those, of course, who don't want AI or, in fact, technology in compliance, but those are generally lawyers who are afraid of losing their cachet and power as lawyers. They fail to understand that compliance is a business process, and that as a business process, you don't need legal skills, you need business skills. But when it comes to AI taking over compliance, there will always be the need for the human touch, whether that be interpretation, whether that be a nuance, whether that be guidance, and AI simply cannot fulfill that role. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in 50 years, but certainly not in my lifetime and probably not in your lifetime. Finally, I'd like to use Harry Mudd and this episode of iMudd to take a look at instilling ethical decision-making in employees. This is a critical challenge that every compliance program must face, even in the era of AI and ChatGPT going forward. So, what are some of the key ways for compliance professionals to foster ethical decision-making by employees? Well, number one, obviously, is ethics training. Providing comprehensive ethics training that goes beyond just teaching the rules. Focus on ethical frameworks, case studies, and exercises that develop employees' ability to reason through the ethical dilemmas. 2, it doesn't start with the employees, it starts with you. Leadership, ethical leadership. It starts at the top, but it also means compliance must lead ethical leadership. Lead by example. Ensure that all leaders at all levels of your organization demonstrate a strong commitment to ethics and integrity in their own actions. This behavior sets the tone, or the tone begets ethics. 3, ethical decision-making models. Equip employees with structured models for ethical decision-making, such as considering the potential impacts on stakeholders, aligning with your organization's values, and elevating the long-term consequences. Number 4, speak up culture. Cultivate an environment where employees feel safe to raise ethical concerns without fear of retaliation. Obviously, speak up culture is legally mandated, but even more importantly, it will make you a better run and more profitable company. Empower those who want to stand up, who want to raise their hand to do so, and protect them and honor that. 3, or rather 5, ethics hotlines. Always remember that a hotline is still an important use, and anonymous channels for employees to report suspected misconduct or ethical breaches can be a very quick and efficient way to bring that information forward. Ensure these are well publicized and swiftly investigated when the information comes in. You might even start your training with, you know what your hotline number is. 6, reinforcement. Recognize and reward employees who demonstrate ethical behavior. Also apply appropriate discipline for ethical lapses to show there are real consequences going forward. 7, continuous improvement. Regularly review ethics programs, gather feedback, and make sure make updates to ensure that it's relevant and effective as your organization evolves. Your goal as a compliance professional is to move beyond rules-based mindsets for your employees so that ethical reasoning and decision-making are ingrained into your corporate culture going forward. This will give your organization the opportunity to be the best itself can be. Join us tomorrow where we take up the episode Metamorphosis.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.